Commander Zekther stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Talon, and watched the stars shift on the viewing screen. His reptilian eyes gleamed with satisfaction as his fleet moved deeper into what the humans called their territory. Behind him, 20 warships of the Vareth Empire followed in perfect formation, their weapons primed and ready for battle. Each ship represented the finest military engineering the Empire could produce. Massive hulls covered in advanced armor plating. Energy cannons capable of vaporizing smaller vessels in a single shot. Shield generators that had protected Vareth fleets for 300 years of expansion. Zekther had spent 40 years in the service of the Vareth Empire. He had seen countless battles and conquered 17 different star systems. Every species he encountered had eventually bowed before Vareth power. Some surrendered quickly, seeing the futility of resistance. Others fought and died, choosing pride over survival. But all of them learned the same lesson in the end. The Vareth Empire was unstoppable. It was inevitable. It was the natural order of the galaxy. The commander's scaled hands gripped the armrests of his command chair. He remembered his first battle 40 years ago, when he was just a junior officer on a cruiser much like the ones following him now. They had faced a species called the Kelvar, insected creatures who thought their hive ships made them invincible. The battle had lasted 3 hours. The Kelvar lost 200 ships. The Vareth lost none. That was when Zekther learned the truth about the galaxy. Strength was everything. Technology determined survival, and the Vareth possessed both in abundance. Over the decades, he had applied those lessons again and again. The bird-like Sarvesh fell in 2 weeks. The aquatic Tauren surrendered after seeing just one Vareth dreadnought. The crystalline Zeltoth tried to fight and were extinct within a month. Now he was here to teach that lesson to the humans. This new species that had appeared and explored space only recently. This young civilization that thought it could claim territory and set boundaries. They would learn, as all the others had learned, that the galaxy belonged to those strong enough to take it. Sub-Commander Rilkaz approached from the tactical station, his clawed feet clicking against the metal floor. He carried a data pad filled with intelligence reports about the human species. Zekther had read these reports many times, but he listened as his second officer reviewed the key points. Rilkaz was young for his position, only 20 years in service, but he was thorough and precise. Those qualities made him valuable. "The humans are a young species, Commander," Rilkaz said, his voice carrying the formal tone expected when addressing a superior officer. "They have only been traveling through space for 200 years. Their territory includes 30 star systems, most of them on the outer edges of explored space. Our scouts report that their technology is primitive compared to ours. Their ships are slow. Their weapons are weak. Their shields cannot match Vareth defensive systems." Zekther nodded slowly. Everything his officer said matched what he already knew. The humans were insignificant. They occupied valuable systems that contained rare minerals the Vareth Empire needed for continued expansion. Dilithium crystals for power generation, quantum metals for advanced computing systems, rare elements that could not be synthesized in laboratories. The High Council had given him simple orders: enter human space, test their defenses, claim 3 border systems. If the humans resisted, destroy their ships and force them to surrender. "What about their military strength?" Zekther asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Minimal, Commander," Rilkaz replied, glancing at his data pad. "Our intelligence suggests they maintain small defense fleets in each system, perhaps 20 to 30 ships per system. Nothing that can stand against our fleet. We have 20 of the finest warships in the Empire. Each one is worth 10 of their vessels. Our shields alone can withstand sustained fire from everything they possess, or so the intelligence reports indicate." Zekther felt his confidence grow. The mission would be simple, quick, decisive. Perhaps the humans would be smart enough to surrender without a fight. That would save time and resources. The Vareth did not enjoy killing unnecessarily. They simply did what was required to expand their empire and secure their future. If the humans chose wisdom over pride, they could be integrated into the empire as subject species. They would pay tribute, provide resources, and live under Vareth rule. It was better than extinction. But if they chose to fight, the battle would be over in hours. Their ships would burn, their defenses would crumble, and they would learn the price of defying the Varath Empire. "Commander," the sensor officer called out from his station across the bridge, "we are approaching the edge of the human system designated New Haven. Our scouts report 2 inhabited planets and several mining stations. Population estimates suggest 8 million humans live in this system." "Good," Zecthar said, leaning forward slightly in his chair. "Maintain course. Ready all weapons, but do not fire unless I give the order. Let us see how the humans respond to our presence. Perhaps they will be reasonable." The fleet moved forward, crossing the invisible line that marked the boundary of human territory. For several minutes nothing happened. The stars continued to shine. The ships glided through empty space. Sensors detected the planets ahead, but no military vessels, no defense platforms, no signs of resistance at all. Zecthar began to wonder if the humans even knew his fleet was here. Perhaps their sensor technology was so primitive that 20 Varath warships could cross their borders undetected. That would make the conquest even easier than expected. They could be deep into human territory before anyone realized the Empire had arrived. Then the communication system activated with a soft chime. A message was coming through on all frequencies, broadcast from somewhere ahead in the system. Zecthar nodded to his communications officer, a female Varath named Seltra, who opened the channel and played the transmission on the bridge speakers. A female voice filled the bridge. It was calm and clear, speaking in the common trade language that most species used for communication between different civilizations. The voice showed no fear, no anger, no emotion at all, just a simple statement of fact. "You are entering restricted human territory. Turn back now. This is your only warning." The message repeated twice more, each time identical in tone and content, then went silent. Several officers on the bridge made sounds that resembled laughter in the Varath language. It was a clicking, hissing noise that conveyed amusement and contempt. Rilkaz shook his head in apparent disbelief, his mouth opening slightly to show rows of sharp teeth. "One warning. They give us one warning and expect us to flee. Do they not understand who they are dealing with?" Zecthar studied the sensor readings on his personal display. His equipment showed a single human ship ahead, positioned at the outer edge of the system near the heliopause where the solar wind gave way to interstellar space. According to the computer's analysis of its energy signature and hull configuration, it was a frigate-class vessel. Old, perhaps 40 years in service based on the design, and it appeared to be completely alone. No other ships nearby, no support vessels, no reinforcements. "One ship," Zecthar said quietly, more to himself than to his officers. "They send one ship against our fleet of 20, against the might of the Varath Empire. Perhaps they are foolish," Rilkaz suggested, "or desperate, or both. Maybe this is all they have left, one old ship and a brave crew willing to die for a hopeless cause." Zecthar considered the situation carefully. The human response made no sense from a military perspective. A single frigate, even a well-armed one, could not stop his fleet. It could barely slow them down. A frigate was designed for patrol duty and escort missions, not fleet engagements. It would have minimal armor, limited weapons, and shields that his cruisers could overwhelm in seconds. Yet the humans had positioned it here at the system's edge and broadcast that warning. Were they truly that ignorant of military tactics? Did they not understand that the Varath fleet could destroy their lone defender without breaking formation? Or was something else happening that he did not understand? For a moment, doubt touched Zekthar's mind. In 40 years of service, he had learned to trust his instincts, and something about this situation felt wrong. Too easy, too obvious, like a trap waiting to be sprung. But what kind of trap could one frigate possibly represent? What could the humans do with a single ship that would threaten 20 Varath warships? He pushed the doubt aside. He was being overly cautious. The humans were young and inexperienced. They probably thought that warning message would intimidate his fleet. Or perhaps they hoped that Varath honor codes would prevent him from attacking an obviously outmatched opponent. But the Varath had no such codes. Honor was for equals. These humans were not equals. "Proceed forward," Zecthar ordered, his voice firm with decision. Weapons officer, target that frigate, disable it but do not destroy it. I want to capture it intact. Perhaps we can learn something from their technology. Even primitive species sometimes develop interesting solutions to common problems. The fleet advanced in formation, maintaining perfect spacing between vessels. Zekther watched the distance close on his tactical display. 5,000 kilometers, 4,000, 3,000. The human frigate did not move. It simply held its position, as if waiting for something, or daring them to come closer. At 2,000 kilometers, well within optimal weapons range for Varath cannons, the human ship's communication system activated again. The same female voice spoke, but this time there was steel beneath the calm tone, a hardness that had not been present in the warning message. This was not the voice of someone afraid or desperate. This was the voice of someone absolutely confident in their position. "This is Captain Linda Morris of the HSS Defender. You were warned. Humanity does not bluff." Before Zekther could respond, before he could even process the meaning of those words, the Defender launched a spread of missiles. 6 projectiles streaked across space toward the Varath fleet, moving faster than any weapons Zekther had seen before. They accelerated at rates that should have torn them apart, but they held together, their engines burning with strange blue-white fire. His weapons officer immediately activated the defensive systems. Energy shields flared to life around the lead Varath cruisers, forming shimmering protective barriers of pure energy that had withstood weapons fire for 3 centuries. These shields were the pride of Varath technology. Nothing short of sustained bombardment from multiple capital ships could penetrate them. The missiles struck the shields, and passed right through them as if the protective barriers did not exist. Zekther watched in shock, his eyes widening and his claws digging into his armrests, as the weapons phased through his fleet's defensive barriers like ghosts passing through walls. 3 cruisers were hit in rapid succession. The missiles detonated on impact with the hulls, their warheads releasing energy in a way that was wrong, that violated what Zekther understood about weapons technology. Explosions tore through armor plating that was designed to withstand asteroid impacts. Hull breaches opened to space, venting atmosphere and crew members into the void. Internal systems failed as energy cascaded through the ship's infrastructure. Emergency alarms shrieked across all channels as the damaged ships reported massive casualties. Entire sections of those cruisers went dark as power systems failed and backup generators struggled to compensate. "Shields are ineffective," the tactical officer shouted, his voice breaking with panic that Zekther had never heard from a Varath warrior before. "Their weapons are passing through our defenses. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. I do not understand how this is possible. Our shields should stop these weapons. They should stop everything." Zekther felt a cold sensation spreading through his body, starting in his core and radiating outward until his limbs felt heavy and numb. This was wrong. Everything about this situation was wrong. Human technology was supposed to be primitive. Their weapons should not be able to penetrate Varath's shields. Those shields had protected his people from the weapons of 47 different species. Nothing got through them. Nothing. Yet 3 of his cruisers were crippled in the opening moments of the engagement. Damage reports flooding and showed dozens dead, hundreds injured, critical systems failing. And he did not understand how it had happened. How could human missiles simply ignore the most advanced defensive technology in known space? "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Zekther commanded, forcing his voice to remain steady despite the fear growing in his chest. "Return fire. Destroy that frigate. Show them the price of attacking the Varath Empire." The Varath fleet opened fire with everything they possessed. Plasma cannons that superheated matter to millions of degrees, energy beams that could cut through asteroids, kinetic projectiles that moved at relativistic speeds. Dozens of weapons converged on the position where the Defender had been, filling space with so much destructive energy that sensors could barely track individual shots. Space lit up like a newborn star. The weapon's fire was enough to destroy a small moon, more than enough to vaporize one lone frigate, no matter how thick its armor or how advanced its shields. For a moment, Zekther thought that perhaps the battle was over. that the humans had made their point but ultimately paid the price for their arrogance. Then the light faded, and the defender was still there. The human frigate sat in space, apparently undamaged, its shields absorbing energy that should have vaporized it 100 times over. The shields glowed with a strange amber light, rippling like water where the Varath weapons hit them, but they held. They held against weapons that could destroy capital ships, against firepower sufficient to crack a planet's crust. Impossible. That was Zekthar's first thought. Impossible. His second thought never fully formed because that was when everything changed forever. Space itself seemed to ripple and shift around the Varath fleet. Reality bent in ways that made Zekthar's eyes hurt to look at. And then they appeared. Ships. Dozens of them, appearing from nowhere, materializing out of empty space as advanced stealth systems deactivated and revealed what had been hidden. Sensors that had shown empty space seconds before now lit up with contacts. Small fighters that moved with impossible agility. Medium cruisers bristling with weapons. Heavy battleships that dwarfed even Varath dreadnoughts. They appeared from every direction, above and below, port and starboard, ahead and behind. Surrounding the Varath fleet in a perfect sphere of firepower that had clearly been planned and positioned long before Zekthar's ships arrived. The tactical display showed the new reality in harsh red symbols. The Varath fleet was surrounded, outnumbered, trapped. Zekthar's claws dug deeper into his armrests, the metal groaning under the pressure. His fleet was trapped in a formation that left no escape routes. The lone frigate had not been a desperate last defense or a foolish gesture of defiance. It had been bait, carefully positioned bait to lure the Varath fleet to exactly this spot. And he had led his entire fleet into a carefully prepared trap like a fool rushing into an obvious snare. "Count the enemy ships," he demanded, his voice harsh with barely controlled fear. The sensor officer's voice shook as he responded, his hands trembling over his controls as he tried to process the flood of new data. 68 confirmed, Commander. No, wait, 72. They are still decloaking, ships appearing all around us. I count 87 human vessels now. 89. 92. Commander, they just keep appearing. More than 90 ships against his 20, nearly 5-to-1 odds. But numbers were not the only problem. These were not the primitive vessels that intelligence reports had described. These ships moved with precision and speed that surpassed anything in the Varath military. Their hull designs were sleek and efficient, suggesting advanced materials and engineering. Their weapons arrays were massive, indicating firepower that might rival or exceed Varath capabilities. And their ability to hide from Varath sensors spoke to technology the Empire did not possess. This was not going to be a quick battle. This was not going to be an easy conquest. This was going to be a fight for survival. And Zekthar realized with growing horror that he might not survive it. A new voice joined the communications channel. This one belonged to a male human who spoke with absolute authority, the kind of voice that came from decades of command experience and absolute confidence in one's position. "Varath Fleet, this is Admiral Henry Price of the Human Defense Network. You violated our territory. You ignored our warning. You opened fire on our vessel. These actions constitute acts of war under the laws recognized by civilized species throughout the galaxy. You have one chance to surrender. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Refuse and you will be destroyed. You have 30 seconds to comply." Rokaz looked at Zekthar with wide eyes, his pupils dilated with fear. "Commander, what are your orders? Should we surrender? Should we fight? We are outnumbered nearly 5-to-1. Our shields do not work against their weapons. What should we do?" Pride and duty warred within Zekthar's mind. The Varath Empire did not surrender. That was fundamental to their culture, their identity, their entire civilization. They did not retreat. They did not bow to threats. They fought to the last breath and the last ship. To surrender would be to dishonor himself, his crew, his family, and his entire species. But looking at the tactical display, Zekthar knew the truth that he did not want to admit. His fleet was outnumbered and outmatched. Their shields were useless. Their weapons had failed to destroy even one human frigate. If he ordered his ships to fight, they would all die. Every one of them. 4,000 Varath warriors would perish in a battle they could not win. If he surrendered, he would return home in disgrace. The High Council would strip him of his rank. His family name would be dishonored for generations. His legacy would be that of the commander who surrendered to a species the Empire had dismissed as primitive. He would spend the rest of his life in shame, a living reminder of failure. Death in battle had honor. Surrender had none. The choice should have been easy, but Zekthar thought about his crew. 4,000 warriors who had served faithfully, who had families waiting for them, who trusted him to lead them. If he chose pride over pragmatism, they would all die. And for what? To satisfy his ego, to preserve his reputation. He made his decision, though it tasted like poison in his mouth. All ships, combat formation delta. Target the largest human vessels. We will break through their lines and escape to hyperspace. If we cannot win this battle, we will at least survive to report what we found here. The High Council must know about this threat. It was not surrender, but it was not victory either. It was survival, tactical retreat. A commander's duty to preserve his forces when victory was impossible. That was what Zekthar told himself as he gave the order, that he was being pragmatic, not cowardly, strategic, not weak. The Varath fleet moved into attack formation, their engines burning hard as they attempted to reorganize and break out of the trap. But the humans were faster, much faster. Before Zekthar's ships could complete their maneuver, before they could even begin their charge toward the weakest point in the human formation, the human fleet opened fire. What followed was not a battle. It was a massacre, a demonstration of technological superiority so complete that resistance was meaningless. Human weapons struck with devastating accuracy. More of those phase missiles that ignored shields and tore through hull plating. Energy beams that cut through Varath armor like it was thin plastic instead of reinforced metal. Strange blue projectiles that seemed to accelerate as they flew, hitting with the force of small asteroids and creating impact craters that punched completely through ships from one side to the other. Torpedoes that released exotic matter on impact, causing hull sections to simply cease existing in a way that made no physical sense. The Varath ships fought back desperately. They fired every weapon they had. Hundreds of plasma bolts, dozens of missiles, kinetic rounds by the thousands. Their weapons officers targeted every human ship they could see, pouring fire into the enemy formation with everything they possessed. It accomplished nothing. The human shields absorbed the Varath weapons without apparent effort. Energy that should have overwhelmed their defensive systems was dispersed harmlessly. Missiles were intercepted by point defense systems so fast that Varath sensors could barely track them. Kinetic rounds hit energy barriers and stopped as if they had struck solid walls. Meanwhile, human weapons continued their methodical destruction of the Varath fleet. One by one, Zekthar watched his ships die. The cruiser Talon's Fury took a direct hit from a human torpedo. Its reactor breached, releasing energy that tore the ship apart from the inside. Crew members died by the hundreds as entire decks were vaporized. The battleship Iron Conqueror, one of the most powerful vessels in the Varath Navy, broke in half under sustained fire from 3 human destroyers. Its 2 halves drifted apart, trailing debris and bodies. The frigate Swift Death lived up to its name by dying swiftly when a human ship fired a weapon that created a localized gravity well. The frigate was crushed like an insect, its hull compressed into a ball of twisted metal the size of a fighter craft. Captain Morris's Defender was no longer alone in the fight. She was joined by other human commanders whose voices filled the communication channels as they coordinated the attack with practiced efficiency. Professional. Calm. Speaking to each other in clipped military terminology that suggested years of training and experience together. Captain Frank Murphy commanded a battleship called the HSS Relentless. His deep voice issued orders to his crew with absolute confidence. All batteries, focus fire on the Varath cruiser at Mark 7.3, burn through their armor and target their engines. Let's see if they can run without propulsion. Commander Patricia Cole led a carrier designated the HSS Vengeance. She deployed fighter squadrons like a chess master moving pieces on a board. Alpha Squadron, attack pattern Delta on the battleship. Beta Squadron, screen our port flank. Gamma Squadron, intercept those missiles before they reach the Defender. Each human ship fought with skill and precision that demonstrated years of training and experience. They moved in coordinated patterns, covered each other's positions, anticipated threats before they developed. This was not a hastily assembled defense force. This was a professional military that had practiced these maneuvers countless times, and they were not just destroying the Varath fleet. They were doing it efficiently, methodically, with minimal waste of ammunition or energy, like butchers in a slaughterhouse who knew exactly where to cut for maximum effect. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7, the damage control officer aboard the Crimson Talon reported, his voice rising in pitch as the list of damage grew longer. Shield generators are failing across the ship, weapon systems operating at 40% capacity and dropping. We have fires in engineering, casualties mounting in every section. Commander, we must retreat, Rokaz said urgently, gripping Zekthar's shoulder with one clawed hand. We cannot win this fight. We cannot even survive this fight. We must flee while we still can. Zekthar knew his officer was right. Of his 20 ships, 15 were already destroyed or disabled. Pieces of broken Varath warships drifted through space, their hulls torn open, their crews dead or dying. Only 5 remained operational, including his flagship, and they were all taking heavy damage. The humans were not even fighting at full capacity. Zekthar could see it in their formations, in the way they moved. They were loose, casual, not pressing their advantage as hard as they could. They were being careful not to accidentally destroy his remaining ships too quickly, drawing out the battle, making a point. They were toying with him. All remaining ships scatter, Zekthar ordered, the words tasting like defeat. Jump to hyperspace on individual vectors, different destinations. We cannot fight our way out together, but perhaps some of us can escape while the humans are occupied hunting the others. It was the order of a coward, and Zekthar knew it. He was abandoning his fellow officers to almost certain death while he fled to save himself. But what choice did he have? If none of them escaped, the Varath High Council would never know what happened here. They would send more fleets into human territory, and those fleets would die just as his was dying now. At least if someone survived, they could carry a warning back. The 5 surviving ships broke formation and accelerated in different directions, each one seeking the edge of the system where they could jump to hyperspace and escape this nightmare. Their engines burned at maximum capacity, pushing past safety limits in desperate attempts to reach minimum safe distance for a jump. The humans pursued immediately. Their ships were faster than the Varath vessels, much faster, and they hunted the fleeing cruisers with ruthless efficiency, like predators chasing wounded prey through tall grass. Zekthar watched his tactical display as 3 of the 5 ships were overtaken and destroyed within minutes. 3 more of his officers, 3 more crews. Hundreds more warriors dying because he had led them into this trap. The battleship Vengeance's pride died when Commander Cole's carrier launched a swarm of autonomous fighter drones. Dozens of small craft, each one apparently controlled by advanced artificial intelligence, swarmed over the battleship like insects. They cut through its hull in hundreds of places simultaneously, releasing atmosphere and causing catastrophic system failures. The battleship broke apart under the assault, its reactor detonating and creating a brief second sun. The cruiser Dark Storm was caught by Captain Murphy's battleship and vaporized by a weapon that Zekthar could not even categorize. It created what looked like a miniature star, a ball of fusion energy that consumed the cruiser completely. When the light faded, there was nothing left, not even debris. The cruiser had simply ceased to exist. The frigate Last Hope discovered its name was bitterly ironic when it was destroyed by the same type of phase missiles that had started this nightmare. The missiles passed through what remained of its shields and detonated inside the ship. The frigate exploded from within, torn apart by energy that found no resistance. Only 2 ships remained now, the Crimson Talon and 1 escort frigate called the Shadow's Edge. Both ships raced toward the system's edge, their engines pushed beyond safe limits. Alarms wailed throughout both vessels as systems overheated and threatened to fail. Behind them, human ships pursued, but the distance was just enough. If they could reach the hyperspace jump point, if their engines held together for just a few more minutes, they might survive. Zekthar gripped his armrests and watched the distance counter tick down. 10,000 kilometers to minimum safe jump distance. 9,000. 8,000. The shadow's edge was slightly ahead, its smaller mass allowing for faster acceleration. His flagship was falling behind, but not by much. 7,000 kilometers. 6,000. The human pursuit was close, but not close enough. They were going to make it. Against all odds, two ships would escape. Zekthar's communications officer suddenly spoke, her voice tight with stress. "Commander, incoming transmission from the human fleet. From Captain Morris specifically." "Play it," Zekthar said grimly. He wanted to hear what the human captain would say. Whether she would gloat, whether she would threaten, whether she would try one last time to convince him to surrender. Captain Morris's voice filled the bridge one final time. There was no anger in her tone, no triumph, no joy at her victory, just cold, hard facts delivered with absolute certainty. The voice of someone who knew they had won and wanted to make sure the lesson was understood. "Go home, Commander Zekthar. Tell your leaders what you found here. Tell them that humanity has been preparing for this moment since we first left our world. Tell them that we knew about your empire long before you knew about us. Tell them that we studied your tactics, your technology, your strategies. We knew you would come eventually. Species like yours always do. So we prepared. We built defenses you could not imagine. We developed weapons you could not counter. We waited for you to make the first move. And when you did, we were ready." She paused, and in that pause Zekthar heard something worse than anger or triumph. He heard pity. "Tell your leaders that human space is forbidden for a reason, not because we are weak and need protection, but because we are strong enough to enforce that law against anyone who violates it. Tell them that if your empire ever crosses our borders again, we will not show mercy. We will not accept surrender. We will not be content with simply defending our territory. We will come to your worlds. We will dismantle your fleets. We will end your civilization's ability to threaten anyone ever again. This is not a threat, Commander. This is a promise, a statement of fact. Now run home and deliver that message, and pray that your leaders are wise enough to listen." The transmission ended. The Crimson Talon reached the jump point, and Zekthar immediately activated the hyperspace drive. Space twisted and folded around his flagship in ways that normal physics did not allow. Reality bent. Colors shifted, and in an instant the battlefield disappeared, replaced by the strange, distorted colors and impossible geometries of faster-than-light travel. They had escaped, 2 ships out of 20, 200 survivors out of 4,000 crew members. Everything else was gone, destroyed, lost, failed. Zekthar sat in his command chair and felt the weight of that failure crushing down on him. This was supposed to be a simple mission: test human defenses, claim some resources, maybe fight a small battle against primitive ships. Instead, he had led his fleet into a trap so perfect that it seemed designed specifically for him. The humans had known exactly what the Varath would do. They had predicted every move, prepared every counter, and executed their plan with precision that spoke to decades of preparation. Rolkaz pulled up the final battle data from their sensors, reviewing the recordings from their systems. His hands shook as he manipulated the controls, scrolling through terabytes of tactical information. What he found made his blood run cold enough that he felt physically ill. "Commander," Rolkaz said quietly, "you need to see this. The computer has finished analyzing the human fleet's performance during the battle." Zekthar looked at the display his second officer brought up. The analysis showed power output readings from human weapons, optimal firing rates based on heat dissipation, formation efficiency ratings, tactical response times, all the data that military computers use to evaluate enemy capabilities. The numbers told a story that made Zekthar want to scream. The human ships had been holding back. Their weapons had been set to reduced power, barely 60% of maximum output. Their formations had been loose and casual rather than optimal. Their response times had been slow, showing that they were not under any real pressure. They had not been fighting at full capacity, not even close. They were not trying their hardest, Rolkaz whispered, his voice filled with horror as he understood what the data meant. They were not struggling, they were not pushed to their limits. They were toying with us, making a point, demonstrating their superiority. They let us escape on purpose so we could tell others what happened here. This entire battle was a message, Commander. A warning delivered at the cost of 18 of our ships and nearly 4,000 of our people. Zekthar slumped in his command chair, his body suddenly feeling twice its normal weight. He understood now. The humans could have destroyed all 20 ships if they had wanted to. They could have prevented any escape, but they had deliberately let 2 vessels flee. They wanted survivors. They wanted witnesses to carry the message back to the Varath homeworld. Human space is forbidden. That was the message. And the price for violating that law had been paid in Varath blood and Varath ships and Varath pride. The journey back to Varath space took 3 days of hyperspace travel. During that time, Zekthar reviewed every moment of the battle again and again, trying to find some mistake he could have avoided or some tactic that might have changed the outcome. He found nothing. The battle had been lost before it began. The moment he crossed into human territory, his fate was sealed. He also spent those 3 days reviewing intelligence reports, trying to understand how their information about humanity had been so completely wrong. The answers were in the data once he knew what to look for, scattered across hundreds of sensor logs and transmission records and scout reports. The humans were not as young and primitive as the Varath believed. Yes, humanity had only been in space for 200 years, but those 200 years had been marked by constant conflict and warfare. Humans had fought each other in devastating wars that spanned entire continents on their homeworld, wars that pushed their technology forward at incredible speed through desperate necessity, wars that taught them lessons about combat and strategy that other species learned over millennia. When they finally achieved true unity and turned their attention outward to the stars, they brought all that knowledge with them. They did not need to learn warfare from other species. They had perfected it on their own. And every conflict they fought in space added to that knowledge, refined their tactics, improved their technology. More disturbing was the realization that humans had known about the Varath Empire for decades. They had monitored Varath expansion carefully. They had studied how the Empire conquered other species. They had analyzed Varath military tactics and identified weaknesses. They had prepared specifically for the day when the Varath would cross their borders, because they knew it would happen eventually. Species like the Varath always expanded until someone stopped them. The isolated border systems that the Empire thought were easy targets were actually fortress worlds, heavily defended by forces that could hide from Varath sensors using stealth technology decades ahead of anything the Empire possessed. The humans had let the Varath think they were weak. They had encouraged that belief through carefully managed intelligence leaks and deliberate displays of older, less capable ships. And when the Varath took the bait and attacked, the trap had closed with perfect precision. New Haven was not a lightly defended colony. It was a kill zone, designed to lure in and destroy any would-be invaders while teaching them a lesson they would never forget. When the Crimson Talon finally arrived at the Varath homeworld, military police were waiting at the docking bay. Zekthar was arrested immediately as he stepped off his ship. He was taken before the High Council still wearing his torn and blood-stained uniform, without time to clean himself or prepare a defense. The council chamber was a massive circular room with seats rising in tiers around a central platform where the accused stood. 12 council members sat in judgment, their faces cold and angry as they stared down at the commander who had failed them. The supreme commander of the Varath military, an ancient warrior named Torkin who had served for 70 years, stood to deliver the charges. "Commander Zekthar," Torkin's voice boomed through the chamber, "you led a fleet of 20 warships into human territory on a mission to test their defenses and claim systems for the Empire. Only 2 ships returned. Nearly 4,000 soldiers are dead. The ships that survived are heavily damaged and barely functional. You have brought shame upon the Empire and disaster upon our military. The Council demands to know how this catastrophic failure occurred. What do you have to say in your defense?" Zekthar stood straight despite his exhaustion, despite his injuries, despite the weight of failure crushing his spirit. "I have no defense, Supreme Commander. I failed in my mission. I led brave warriors to their deaths. I bring shame to my family and to the Empire." but I also bring information that the Council must hear, even if it costs me my life to deliver it. The humans are not what we believe them to be. They are far more dangerous than our intelligence suggested. They possess technology that surpasses our own. They have weapons that render our shields useless. They have stealth systems that our sensors cannot detect. And most importantly, they have been preparing for war with us since before we knew they existed. He went on to describe the battle in excruciating detail. The trap, the cloaked ships that appeared from nowhere, the weapons that phased through Varath's shields as if they were not there, the overwhelming firepower demonstrated by the human fleet, the calculated way the humans had fought, not with rage or desperation, but with cold efficiency born of long preparation and extensive training. Murmurs ran through the council chamber. Several members leaned forward, their interest clearly piqued despite their anger. Others exchanged glances, communicating silently about the implications of what they were hearing. The Supreme Commander raised a clawed hand for silence, and the chamber quieted immediately. You are saying that a species only 200 years into space travel has technology superior to the Varath Empire, an empire that has existed for 3,000 years, that has conquered 47 different species, that has never been defeated in open warfare. Yes, Supreme Commander, Zekthar replied firmly. The humans are young, but they are not primitive. They spent most of their history fighting each other in wars more devastating than anything the Empire has experienced. War is not something they learned from other species. It is something they perfected on their own world before they ever reached the stars. When they finally achieved space travel and turned their attention outward, they brought that knowledge with them, and they used it to prepare for threats like us. They have been watching the Empire expand for decades, studying us, learning our tactics, developing specific counters to our technology, and when we finally crossed their borders as they knew we eventually would, they were ready, more than ready. They were eager to demonstrate exactly how ready they were. He showed them the sensor logs that proved everything he was saying, the recordings of weapons that should not exist, the energy signatures that did not match anything in Varath databases, the stealth technology that allowed dozens of ships to hide in plain space, the tactical coordination that spoke to years of joint training exercises. Most damning were the analysis results showing that the human fleet had been holding back during the battle, fighting at reduced capacity, taking their time, making a point rather than simply achieving victory. The humans had not been struggling to defeat the Varath fleet. They had been delivering a carefully calculated message. They let us escape, Zekthar said, his voice heavy with the bitterness of that realization. Not because they were merciful, but because they wanted us to carry a message back to you. Human space is forbidden. They are willing and able to enforce that law with overwhelming force. They made it very clear that if we attack again, they will not simply defend their borders. They will come to our worlds and destroy our civilization. They have the technology, they have the weapons, they have the will. And based on what I witnessed, I believe they have the capability to do exactly what they promised. The council chamber erupted in angry voices. Some members called for immediate preparation for a massive retaliatory strike to avenge their losses. Others demanded more information before committing to any course of action. A few sat in stunned silence, trying to process the reality that the Empire's expansion had finally met an obstacle it could not overcome through simple application of force. Arguments filled the chamber. Voices rose in anger and fear and wounded pride. The Varath Empire had never been defeated like this, had never encountered a species that not only matched their technology but exceeded it, had never been forced to consider the possibility that they were not the dominant military power in their region of space. The Supreme Commander restored order with difficulty, pounding his staff against the floor until the noise level dropped enough for him to be heard. Enough. All of you be silent. This council will not descend into chaos. He turned his attention back to Zekthar. You believe this threat from the humans is credible. You believe they have the capacity to attack our homeworld. I know it is credible, Supreme Commander, Zekthar said with absolute conviction. I watched them destroy 15 warships in less than 2 hours with contemptuous ease. I saw technology that should not exist according to our understanding of physics. I heard absolute confidence in their voices as they explained exactly what they would do if we attacked again. The humans were not making empty threats or engaging in psychological warfare. They were stating facts, simple truths that they wanted us to understand. If we attack them again with a force like mine, we will lose even more badly than we did this time. And if we attack with a larger force, if we commit significant portions of our military to a war with humanity, they will not settle for defending their territory. They will counterattack. They will come to our worlds, and we will not be able to stop them. One of the council members, an elderly female named Charlotte who had served on the council for 30 years, spoke from her elevated seat. Her voice was quieter than the others but carried weight from decades of experience. How is it possible that our intelligence failed so completely? We have scouts observing dozens of species. We have spies embedded in foreign governments. We have sensor networks throughout explored space. We have systems specifically designed to identify military threats before they become serious. How did we not know the humans were this powerful? How did we miss technology this advanced? It was the question that had haunted Zekthar throughout his journey home. He had asked himself the same thing 1,000 times. Because the humans wanted us to underestimate them, Counselor. They deliberately hid their true capabilities from our observation. They made their border systems appear lightly defended. They allowed our scouts to observe only their older, less capable ships. They fed us false information through channels we thought were secure. They manipulated our intelligence networks so that we would see them as easy prey, weak, vulnerable, ripe for conquest. And when we took the bait and attacked what we thought was a defenseless target, they revealed their true strength. This entire situation was orchestrated by human military intelligence. They predicted our actions. They prepared their responses. They executed a plan that had probably been in development for years. We were not fighting a desperate defense. We were participating in a demonstration specifically designed to teach the Empire a lesson about the cost of violating human territory. Another council member, a decorated war hero named Korvash who had won 17 major battles, stood and pointed at Zekthar accusingly. His voice dripped with contempt. You speak of manipulation and deception as if they are admirable qualities, as if the humans should be praised for their dishonesty. The Varath Empire does not cower behind tricks and lies. We fight with honor and strength. We face our enemies openly. We do not hide in shadows and ambush those we are afraid to meet in fair combat. Zekthar felt anger rise in his chest for the first time since entering the council chamber. And the humans fight to win, Counselor. They do not care about honor in the way we understand it. They care about protecting their people and their territory. They care about survival and security. And they are willing to use any tactic, any strategy, any weapon necessary to achieve those goals. That is why they are dangerous. Not because they are physically strong or technologically advanced, though they are both, but because they are pragmatic. They do not limit themselves to tactics we consider honorable. They do whatever works, whatever achieves their objectives with minimum cost to themselves. And that pragmatism, combined with their technological superiority, makes them more dangerous than any species the Empire has encountered in 3,000 years of expansion. The Supreme Commander studied Zekthar for a long moment, his ancient eyes unreadable. If what you say is true, then we face a significant threat, but we also face a question of pride and reputation. The Varath Empire has never backed down from a challenge. We have never allowed another species to dictate terms to us. If we allow this defeat to stand, if we accept human restrictions on our expansion without retaliation, other species will see it as weakness. They will think they can challenge us as the humans have. They will test our borders, question our authority. The Empire's reputation for invincibility will be shattered. Other species might even ally with the humans against us. Zekthar understood the dilemma the Council faced: military necessity versus political reality, survival versus pride, the smart choice versus the choice that preserved the Empire's image of strength. Then we will have to make a choice, Supreme Commander, Zekthar said quietly. Pride or survival, reputation or reality, because if we attack the humans again with insufficient force, We will lose more ships and more lives, and our reputation will be even more damaged. And if we attack with our full military might, if we commit everything we have to destroying humanity, we may win individual battles, but we will lose the war. The humans made their position very clear. They will not simply defend their borders if we attack again. They will bring their war to our worlds. They will target our infrastructure, our shipyards, our colonies, our homeworld itself. And based on what I witnessed, based on the technology they demonstrated, I believe they have the capability to do exactly that. They can strike deep into Vareth territory. They can destroy targets we thought were protected. They can hurt us in ways we never imagined possible. The council debated for hours. Zecthar was forced to stand on the platform and listen as they argued about honor and pride and military strategy and the future of the empire. Some members wanted immediate revenge regardless of cost. Others counseled caution and further intelligence gathering. A few even suggested attempting diplomatic contact with humanity, though that suggestion was shouted down by more aggressive voices. All of them struggled with the fundamental reality that a species they had dismissed as insignificant had humiliated one of their finest fleets and exposed critical vulnerabilities in Vareth military doctrine. Arguments grew heated. Accusations were thrown. Ancient rivalries between council members surfaced as they debated the proper response. But beneath all the anger and wounded pride, Zecthar could see fear. Real fear. Because every member of the council understood that the Vareth Empire's period of unopposed expansion might be over, that they had finally encountered a species they could not simply conquer through application of superior force. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the Supreme Commander made a decision. Commander Zecthar, you are stripped of your rank and privileges. You will be imprisoned pending further investigation into the circumstances of your failure. Your family name will bear the mark of your disgrace. However, your warning will be taken seriously. The Council will study the data you brought back in detail. We will evaluate our intelligence networks and identify how they failed us so completely. We will analyze human technology and develop countermeasures. And we will decide how to respond to this threat in a manner that protects both the Empire's security and its honor. As guards moved forward to take him into custody, Zecthar made one final statement to the council. His last words as a commander, his final attempt to prevent the disaster he saw coming if pride won over wisdom. When you make your decision, Supreme Commander, remember this. The humans did not just defeat us. They humiliated us. They demonstrated their superiority so completely that 18 ships were destroyed and we could do nothing to stop it. They wanted us to know we never had a chance. That warning Captain Morris gave at the beginning was not mercy. It was a demonstration of their confidence, a statement that they were so far beyond us that they could afford to be generous. We attacked a species that had been studying us for decades while we remained ignorant of their true nature. We walked into a trap that was designed specifically for us. We became a teaching example for other species who might think about violating human territory. If we attack again, driven by wounded pride and desire for revenge, they will not just defend their borders. They will come for our worlds. They will dismantle our fleets. They will destroy our shipyards and our military infrastructure. They will end the Vareth Empire's ability to threaten anyone ever again. And based on what I witnessed in that battle, based on technology I still do not fully understand, we will not be able to stop them. The guards gripped his arms and began to lead him from the chamber. Behind him, the council erupted into argument once more, voices rising in anger and fear as they grappled with a reality their civilization was not prepared to accept. As Zecthar was taken through the corridors toward his cell, he wondered what decision they would make. Would they choose wisdom? Would they accept that the Empire's expansion had reached its natural limit, that some territories were forbidden for good reason? Or would they choose pride? Would they assemble a massive war fleet and attack again, convinced that overwhelming force could succeed where his smaller fleet had failed? He feared he already knew the answer. The Vareth Empire had existed for 3,000 years on the principle that strength was everything, that the strong conquered the weak, that the galaxy belonged to those who could take it. Changing that fundamental belief would require more than one failed battle. It would require the Council to admit that the Empire was not invincible, that there were species in the galaxy more powerful than the Varath, that humanity was one such species, and Zecthar doubted the Council had the wisdom or humility to make that admission, which meant more fleets would be assembled, more warriors would be sent to human space, more ships would be destroyed, more lives would be lost, and eventually, just as Captain Morris had promised, the humans would stop simply defending their borders. They would bring their war to the Varath homeworld. When that day came, the Empire would learn the final lesson. Human space was forbidden, and those who violated that law paid the price in full. 6 months passed since the disaster at New Haven. 6 months of debate, anger, and wounded pride in the halls of the Varath High Council. 6 months during which the Empire's leaders struggled with a reality their civilization had never faced before. They had been defeated, humiliated, sent running from a species they had dismissed as primitive and weak. The debate had been fierce and often violent. Council members argued day and night about the proper response. Some demanded immediate retaliation on a massive scale. Others counseled patience and further intelligence gathering. A few even suggested accepting the loss and redirecting expansion efforts away from human territory. Those few were shouted down and nearly removed from the Council for cowardice. In the end, pride won over wisdom. It always did with the Varath. The High Council authorized the assembly of the largest war fleet in the Empire's history. 300 warships drawn from every corner of Varath space, dreadnoughts that could destroy planets, carriers filled with fighter squadrons, cruisers equipped with the latest weapons technology, battle stations that could serve as mobile fortresses. Every available resource was poured into this fleet. Every tactical innovation the Empire had developed over 3,000 years was incorporated into the battle plan. The Council selected Grand Admiral Kreshtal to command this armada. Kreshtal was a legend in Varath military circles. He had served for 40 years and never lost a battle, not once in 4 decades of warfare. He had conquered 12 star systems personally, defeated 8 different species, destroyed over 500 enemy ships without losing more than a handful of his own vessels. If anyone could succeed where Zecthar had failed, it was Kreshtal. The Grand Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Fury, and reviewed the fleet assembled around him. 300 ships in perfect formation, tens of thousands of warriors ready to fight, weapon systems more advanced than anything Zecthar's fleet had possessed. The Empire had learned from that first defeat. They had analyzed every scrap of data from the Battle of New Haven. They had developed countermeasures for the weapons the humans used. New shield configurations designed to stop phase missiles, enhanced sensors to detect cloaked ships, electronic warfare systems to disrupt human communications. Kreshtal was confident, not arrogantly confident like Zecthar had been, but professionally confident based on superior numbers and careful preparation. Yes, the humans had won the first encounter, but they had faced only 20 ships. This time they would face 300, 15 times as many. Even if human technology was superior, which Kreshtal still doubted, sheer numbers would overwhelm them. His tactical officer, a younger Varath named Vexler, approached with the final mission briefing. Grand Admiral, all ships report ready for combat. The fleet is assembled and awaiting your orders. Our target is the human colony system designated Archer's Point. Intelligence indicates 2 inhabited planets with a combined population of 8 million humans. Long-range scans suggest minimal military presence, perhaps a dozen patrol ships and some orbital defense platforms, nothing that can stand against our fleet. Kreshtal studied the tactical display showing Archer's Point. It was deeper into human territory than New Haven, which meant the humans would not expect an attack there. They would have concentrated their forces at the border after Zecthar's intrusion. This system would be vulnerable, exposed. Perfect for a devastating strike that would force humanity to negotiate from a position of weakness. Excellent, Kreshtal said. Proceed to Archer's Point at maximum speed. When we arrive, we will demonstrate the full might of the Varath Empire. The humans will learn that their victory at New Haven was a fluke, That overwhelming force cannot be stopped by tricks and deception. They will surrender or they will watch their colonies burn. Either way, the Empire will reclaim its honor. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, traveling through the strange dimensions beyond normal space. The journey took 3 days. During that time, Kreshtal reviewed every detail of the battle plan. He studied Zekthar's recordings from New Haven dozens of times, analyzing human tactics and looking for weaknesses. He drilled his commanders on proper responses to various scenarios. He made sure every ship knew its role and every officer understood the importance of this mission. This was not just about conquering territory or claiming resources. This was about proving that the Varath Empire remained the dominant military power in this region of space. That one defeat did not mean the Empire was weak. That humanity's technology, however advanced, could not stand against superior numbers and tactical skill. When the fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Archer's Point, Kreshtal expected immediate resistance. He expected human ships to challenge his fleet. He expected warnings and threats. He expected the humans to try the same tactics they had used against Zekthar. Instead, he found silence, empty space, no ships, no transmissions, nothing. "Sensor report," Kreshtal ordered, leaning forward in his command chair. The sensor officer worked his controls for several moments before responding. "Grand Admiral, I am detecting the 2 inhabited planets as expected. Cities are visible on both worlds. Energy signatures consistent with large populations, but I am not detecting any military vessels, no defense platforms, no orbital weapons. The system appears completely undefended." Vexler moved to the sensor station to verify the readings personally. "This makes no sense, Grand Admiral. After what happened at New Haven, the humans should have strengthened their defenses. They should have military forces in every system, yet this colony appears abandoned by their fleet. Could it be a trap like before?" Kreshtal considered that possibility carefully. He remembered Zekthar's warning that the humans had lured the previous fleet into an ambush, using what appeared to be a vulnerable target. Could they be trying the same tactic again? But that seemed unlikely. The humans knew the Empire would send a larger force after the first defeat. They had to know a trap that worked once would not work twice against prepared opponents. Unless the humans were actually as weak as original intelligence suggested. Unless New Haven had been their only well-defended system. Perhaps they had concentrated all their military assets there, knowing it was the most likely target for a Varath attack. Now that the Empire was striking deeper into their territory, at a less strategically important system, the humans simply had no forces available to defend it. That made sense to Kreshtal. It fit with what he believed about the humans. They were young, inexperienced. They had gotten lucky at New Haven, catching Zekthar by surprise with hidden ships and unexpected weapons, but luck ran out eventually, and you could not defend an entire civilization with tricks. "Proceed into the system," Kreshtal ordered. "All ships maintain formation. Keep shields at maximum and weapons ready. If this is a trap, we will be prepared for it. If it is not, we will complete our mission and show these humans the price of defying the Empire." The massive fleet moved deeper into the Archer's Point system. 300 ships advancing in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready. Still no resistance appeared. No warnings. No threats. The silence continued as they passed the outer planets and approached the 2 inhabited worlds. Kreshtal's unease grew with every passing minute. Something about this situation felt wrong. Not wrong in an obvious way that he could point to and say there is the danger, but wrong in a subtle way that made his instincts scream warnings his conscious mind could not justify. He had felt this sensation before, many years ago, in his first command. That nagging certainty that something terrible was about to happen even though all available data suggested everything was fine. He had ignored that feeling once. His ship had nearly been destroyed when an enemy fleet appeared from behind a moon he had assumed was unoccupied. He had learned to trust his instincts after that. They were usually right even when logic suggested otherwise. "Grand Admiral," the communications officer called out. "We are receiving a transmission from deeper in the system. Audio only. Should I play it?" "Yes," Kreshtal said, though every instinct told him he would not like what he was about to hear. A male voice filled the bridge. The same voice that had spoken during the Battle of New Haven according to the recordings Kreshtal had studied. Admiral Henry Price, the human commander who had orchestrated Zekthar's defeat. Grand Admiral Kreshtal, I am Admiral Henry Price of the Human Defense Fleet. Welcome to Archer's Point. We have been expecting you. The transmission paused. In that pause, Kreshtal felt his blood turn cold. We have been expecting you. 4 words that confirmed his worst suspicions. This was a trap, just like New Haven. The humans had known the Empire would attack again. They had predicted which system would be targeted. They had prepared accordingly. But how? How could they have known? Archer's Point was chosen specifically because it was deep in human territory where they would not expect an attack. The decision had been made in secret by the High Council. The fleet's destination had been classified. Only senior officers knew where they were going. How could the humans have predicted this? Admiral Price's voice continued. You were given a warning 6 months ago. You were told that human space is forbidden. You were shown the consequences of violating that law. Yet here you are again with a larger fleet making the same mistake. I want to be absolutely clear about what is about to happen. You have brought 300 ships to attack a civilian population. We cannot allow that. We will not allow that. You have one opportunity to surrender. Power down your weapons and engines. Prepare to be boarded. You have 60 seconds to comply. Kreshtal's mind raced. Surrender. The Grand Admiral of the largest fleet in Varath history surrendered before a single shot was fired. Impossible. Unthinkable. He had 300 ships. Even if the humans had prepared another ambush, even if they had more vessels hidden somewhere in the system, his fleet was so large that it could fight its way through any opposition. All ships combat formation Omega, Kreshtal commanded. Prepare for engagement. Show these humans that the Varath Empire does not surrender. We do not bow to threat. We fight and we win. His fleet began to reorganize into attack formation. Ships moved into overlapping defensive positions. Weapons systems activated. Shields reinforced. 300 warships preparing for battle. Then the humans appeared. Space itself seemed to tear open around the Varath fleet. Not just a few dozen ships like at New Haven. Hundreds of ships. Emerging from stealth systems so advanced that the Varath's improved sensors still could not detect them until they revealed themselves. Human vessels appeared above and below, port and starboard, ahead and behind, surrounding the Varath fleet in a sphere of firepower that made the ambush at New Haven look like a minor skirmish. The tactical display updated frantically as the computer tried to count the new contacts. The numbers climbed and climbed. 200 human ships, 300, 400. 500, 600, 700, 800, over 800 human warships, nearly 3 times the size of Kreshtal's fleet. But it was not just the numbers that made Kreshtal's heart sink. It was the types of ships he was seeing. At New Haven, the humans had used mostly cruisers and destroyers, standard warships. But here, they had deployed something entirely different. Massive carriers larger than anything in the Varath fleet, each one launching swarms of fighters and drones. Battleships that dwarfed Varath dreadnoughts, their hulls bristling with weapons. Strange vessels that seemed to distort space around them, whose purpose Kreshtal could not even guess. And at the center of this enormous fleet, a single ship larger than any vessel Kreshtal had ever seen. A command ship that must have been 3 kilometers long, covered in armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. According to the sensors, this ship's energy output exceeded the combined output of 10 Varath dreadnoughts. Grand Admiral, Vexler's voice shook with barely controlled terror. We are completely surrounded. The human fleet outnumbers us nearly 3 to 1, and their ships are larger than ours, more heavily armed. Grand Admiral, we cannot win this battle. Admiral Price's voice returned. Grand Admiral Kreshtal, you have a reputation as a brilliant tactician. A commander who never lost a battle in 40 years. Look at your tactical display. Study the situation. Tell me, what does your tactical training say about your chances of victory? Kreshtal stared at the display. At the red symbols representing human ships surrounding his fleet. At the analysis showing human ship capabilities far exceeding what Varath intelligence had suggested. at the projected casualty rates if battle was joined. The computer's assessment was clear. If the Vareth fleet fought, casualties would be catastrophic. 90% losses within the first hour, complete destruction within 2 hours. The numbers did not lie, but surrendering was equally impossible. If he surrendered without fighting, the High Council would see it as cowardice. They would strip him of rank, execute him for treason. His entire family would be dishonored. Everything he had built over 40 years would be destroyed. "We will fight," Kreshtal said quietly. "All ships open fire. Target the largest human vessels. If we cannot win, we will at least show them that the Vareth do not fear death." The Vareth fleet opened fire with everything they had. Hundreds of weapons discharged simultaneously. Plasma cannons, energy beams, missiles, kinetic projectiles, exotic weapons that the Empire had developed specifically to counter the technology demonstrated at New Haven. The combined firepower of 300 warships converged on the human fleet. For a moment, space lit up with destructive energy. Enough firepower to destroy a small fleet, enough to cripple even a large force. Kreshtal watched the tactical display, hoping to see human ships taking damage, hoping that Vareth weapons had improved enough to hurt their enemies. The light faded. Every single human ship remained intact. Their shields had absorbed the Vareth weapons without apparent difficulty. Energy that should have overwhelmed defensive systems was dispersed harmlessly. Missiles were intercepted by point defense so accurate that not one warhead reached its target. The entire Vareth volley accomplished nothing. Then the humans returned fire. What happened next was not a battle. It was systematic destruction delivered with precision that spoke to absolute technological superiority. Human weapons struck the Vareth fleet from every direction. Those same phase missiles that had proven so effective at New Haven, but in vastly greater numbers. Energy weapons that cut through Vareth armor like paper. Strange blue projectiles that accelerated to impossible speeds and punched completely through ships. Weapons that created localized gravity wells that crushed vessels like tin cans. Devices that generated electromagnetic pulses so powerful they shut down entire ship systems in seconds. The Vareth fleet's new countermeasures proved worthless. The improved shields designed to stop phase missiles failed completely. The enhanced sensors meant to detect cloaked ships provided no tactical advantage when the humans were fighting openly. The electronic warfare systems intended to disrupt human communications had no effect on enemy coordination. Kreshtal watched in horror as his fleet died around him. The dreadnought Conquest's end exploded when a human torpedo breached its reactor core. The carrier war's thunder broke apart under sustained fire from 3 human battleships. Dozens of cruisers were destroyed in the opening minutes by weapons so advanced that Vareth computers could not even classify them properly. Individual voices cut through the chaos on the communications channels. Human commanders coordinating the attack with casual efficiency. Captain Linda Morris, the same officer who had commanded the Defender at New Haven, now led a squadron of destroyers. Her voice was calm and professional. Blue Squadron, focus fire on the Vareth carrier at bearing 327. Disable their launch bays before they can deploy fighters. Red Squadron, cover our approach and intercept any missiles targeting the Resolve. Captain Frank Murphy commanded one of the massive battleships. His voice carried the confidence of a man who knew he held overwhelming advantage. All batteries, sustained fire on the Vareth dreadnoughts, priority targeting on their engine sections. Let us see if they can fight without propulsion. Commander Patricia Cole's carrier had launched hundreds of autonomous fighters. Her commands directed them with precision. Fighter wings Alpha through Delta, attack pattern Epsilon on the Vareth cruiser formation. Gamma and Omega wings, defensive screen around the fleet. Do not let any Vareth ships break through to the inhabited planets. And overseeing it all, Admiral Price's voice from his massive command ship. All units, maintain formation. Do not pursue fleeing vessels beyond engagement range. Our goal is to defend this system, not to chase down every enemy ship. Let them run if they choose to. We will give them that option. Kreshtal realized with sick certainty that the humans were once again holding back. They were not pressing their attack as hard as they could. They were being methodical, careful, giving the Vareth fleet chances to surrender that his pride would not let him accept. All ships evasive maneuvers, Kreshtal ordered desperately. Scatter formation, try to break through their lines. If we can reach the system's edge, we can jump to hyperspace and escape. But escape was impossible. The human fleet was too large, too well coordinated, too fast. Every time a group of Vareth ships tried to break away, human vessels moved to intercept. They herded the Vareth fleet like predators herding prey, cutting off escape routes and forcing the survivors back toward the center. The battle continued for 30 brutal minutes. 30 minutes during which the Vareth fleet was systematically dismantled. 30 minutes of watching brave warriors die because pride demanded they fight a battle they could not win. Kreshtal's flagship took multiple hits. Hull breaches opened on several decks. Shield generators failed one by one. Weapon systems went offline as power distribution networks were damaged. The Eternal Fury was dying, and Kreshtal knew it. "Grand Admiral," Vexler shouted over the alarms and explosions. "We have lost 200 ships, 200 ships destroyed in less than an hour. The fleet is breaking apart. Officers are requesting permission to surrender. Grand Admiral, we must surrender or we will all die here." Kreshtal looked at the tactical display one final time. Of his 300 ships, fewer than 100 remained operational, and those survivors were all heavily damaged. The human fleet had lost exactly 0 ships. They had barely taken damage. This was not a battle. This was an execution. He had spent 40 years building his reputation, 40 years of victories, 40 years of proving he was the finest tactical mind in the Vareth military, and in 30 minutes all of it had been rendered meaningless. The humans had beaten him as easily as an adult defeats a child. Pride demanded he fight to the death. But duty to his remaining crew demanded he save them if possible. "All ships cease fire," Kreshtal ordered, the words tasting like poison. "Power down weapons and engines, we surrender." The remaining Vareth ships went dark one by one. Engines shut down, weapons powered off, shields dropped. They drifted in space, broken and defeated, surrounded by the massive human fleet. Admiral Price's voice returned. "Grand Admiral Kreshtal, you have made the correct choice. All Vareth vessels will maintain their current positions. Human forces will board your ships and take your crews into custody. Any vessel that attempts to flee or reactivate weapons will be destroyed immediately. We will treat your personnel according to the laws of war. They will not be harmed as long as they cooperate. You and your senior officers will be transported to my flagship. Do you understand these terms?" "I understand," Kreshtal said, his voice hollow. "Good. Prepare to receive boarding parties." Over the next several hours, human Marines boarded every Vareth ship. The process was smooth and professional. The humans were clearly experienced at this. They secured each vessel, disarmed the crew, and began treating the wounded. Kreshtal noted with bitter irony that human medics were saving Vareth lives, tending to warriors who had just been trying to kill them. It was almost insulting. Kreshtal and his senior officers were brought aboard the massive human command ship. As they were escorted through its corridors, Kreshtal tried to analyze what he was seeing. The ship's interior was clean and well-maintained. Technology visible in wall panels and control systems appeared decades ahead of Vareth equivalents. The human crew moved with practiced efficiency, showing no signs of stress or fatigue despite having just fought a major battle. They were brought to a large conference room. Admiral Price was waiting there with several other senior human officers. Captain Morris stood to his right, Captain Murphy to his left. Commander Cole and several others Kreshtal did not recognize completed the group. Admiral Price gestured to chairs on the opposite side of a long table. "Please, sit. There is much we need to discuss." Kreshtal sat reluctantly. Vexler and the other Vareth officers followed his lead. Across the table, the human commanders studied them with expressions that mixed professional courtesy with clear disapproval. "Grand Admiral Kreshtal," Admiral Price began, "you have a distinguished service record, 40 years without a single defeat, 12 systems conquered, 8 species subjugated, over 500 enemy ships destroyed. You are considered one of the finest military minds in the Vareth Empire. So I have a question for you. What were you thinking? Kreshtal met the Admiral's gaze. "I was thinking that the Empire's honor demanded we respond to your attack on our fleet at New Haven. That we could not allow such a defeat to stand without retaliation. That 300 ships would be sufficient to overcome whatever technological advantages you possess." "New Haven was not our attack," Captain Morris said sharply. "Your fleet entered our territory without permission, ignored our warning, opened fire on my ship. Everything that followed was self-defense. We were protecting our territory from an unprovoked invasion." "From our perspective, we were simply expanding into unclaimed space," Kreshtal replied. "The galaxy is large, resources are scarce, strong species take what they need. That has been the natural order for millions of years. The Varath Empire has existed for 3,000 years on that principle." Admiral Price leaned forward. "And what has that principle cost you? How many species has your empire destroyed? How many billions of lives ended? How many civilizations erased from existence? All because you believed might makes right. We do what is necessary for survival," Kreshtal said, "just as any species would do in our position." "No," Admiral Price said firmly. "Not any species. Humanity learned a different lesson from our history. We learned that cooperation produces better results than conquest. That trade is more profitable than theft. That peaceful coexistence is preferable to endless war. We learned these lessons the hard way, through centuries of conflict on our homeworld. And when we reached the stars, we brought that knowledge with us." Captain Murphy spoke for the first time. "You asked what you were thinking, Grand Admiral. I will tell you what you were not thinking. You were not thinking about the 8 million civilians living in this system. You came here to attack worlds full of families, children, people just trying to live their lives. You came here to threaten them with bombardment, to force their surrender through terror. That is not warfare, that is mass murder." Kreshtal felt anger rise in his chest. "Do not lecture me about warfare, human. The Varath Empire has fought more battles than your species can count. We understand the realities of military conflict. Civilians always suffer in war. That is unfortunate but inevitable." "It is only inevitable if you choose to target them," Commander Cole said coldly. "We could have destroyed your fleet at the system's edge before you came anywhere near the inhabited planets. We let you proceed deeper so that you would be completely surrounded when we revealed ourselves. We protected our civilians while ensuring your complete defeat. That is how professional militaries operate." Admiral Price raised a hand to forestall further argument. "Grand Admiral, we did not bring you here to debate military philosophy. We brought you here to explain what happens next. Your fleet is captured. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of technology, all of it now belongs to humanity. We will study it, we will learn from it, and we will use that knowledge to ensure no other species makes the same mistake your empire has made twice now." He paused to let that sink in. "Your crews will be held as prisoners of war. They will be treated well according to established conventions. They will receive medical care, adequate food, proper shelter. When appropriate, they will be returned to your empire, but you and your senior officers will remain in human custody longer. You will be interrogated. We will learn everything you know about Varath military capabilities, territory, and strategic plans." Kreshtal felt his stomach twist. They were going to extract every secret the Empire possessed, use captured officers to map Varath weaknesses. The High Council will never accept these terms. They will send more fleets, larger fleets. They will commit the entire military if necessary to rescue us and punish you for this humiliation. "Let them try," Admiral Price said quietly. "Grand Admiral, I need you to understand something very important. What you saw today was not humanity's full military capability. Not even close. This system's defense fleet represents approximately 10% of our total forces. We have 8 more fleets of similar size stationed throughout human territory. We have defense platforms around every inhabited world that could destroy your entire empire's military 3 times over. We have weapons in development that make what you experience today look primitive." He stood and walked to a wall display, activating it to show a star map. Varath territory appeared in red, human space in blue. "Your empire controls approximately 200 star systems. You have a military of perhaps 5,000 ships total. You think that makes you powerful. It makes you insignificant compared to what humanity has built. We do not need to fear your fleets. We do not need to worry about your retaliation. If your High Council is foolish enough to attack us again, we will do what we promised 6 months ago. We will bring the war to your worlds. Captain Morris stepped forward. Grand Admiral, humanity has been watching your empire expand for decades. We have seen what you do to species you conquer. The Kelvar, extinct. The Sarvesh, enslaved. The Tauren, their world strip-mined and their population reduced to a fraction of its original size. 47 species have fallen to Vareth conquest. Do you think we will allow ourselves to become number 48? We prepared for you, Captain Murphy added. We knew you would eventually come to our borders. We knew you would see us as weak and vulnerable. So we built defenses you could not imagine. We developed technology you could not match. We waited for you to make the first move. And when you did, we taught you a lesson. Twice now. How many lessons will your empire need before it understands the truth? Admiral Price returned to his seat. Grand Admiral Kreshtal, you will remain in our custody for now. Eventually, you will be returned to your empire along with a treaty, a formal peace agreement that will establish permanent boundaries between human and Varath space. Your High Council will have a choice. Accept the treaty and live in peace, or reject it and face the consequences. What consequences? Kreshtal asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. If your empire attacks us again, we will not simply defend our borders. We will counterattack. We will target your military installations, your shipyards, your production facilities. We will cripple your empire's ability to wage war against anyone. And if that does not convince your leaders to cease hostilities, we will expand our operations. We will liberate the species you have enslaved. We will free the worlds you have conquered. We will dismantle your empire piece by piece until nothing remains of your civilization except a warning to others about the price of aggressive expansion. The conference room fell silent. Kreshtal stared at the human admiral, trying to determine if he was bluffing. But everything he had seen suggested the humans were completely serious. They had the technology. They had the forces. They had demonstrated both the capability and willingness to back up their words with overwhelming action. Your empire can choose cooperation or destruction, Admiral Price continued. We would prefer cooperation. We would prefer to establish trade relations, cultural exchange, peaceful coexistence. Humanity does not seek to conquer. We seek to live in a galaxy where borders are respected and laws are observed, where military force is used only in defense, never in aggression. If your High Council can accept those principles, there is no reason our species cannot coexist peacefully. He leaned back in his chair. But if your leaders choose pride over pragmatism, if they cannot accept that their era of unopposed expansion is over, then we will do what is necessary to protect ourselves and others. We gave you a warning at New Haven. You ignored it. We gave you another chance to withdraw today before the battle began. You chose to fight. The price has been paid in your ships and your warriors. How much more are you willing to pay? Kreshtal had no answer. He sat in silence, his mind replaying the battle, watching his fleet destroyed, seeing technology he could not counter and numbers he could not match, understanding finally that everything the Empire believed about its own superiority was false. Take them to quarters, Admiral Price ordered the guards. Comfortable quarters with proper food and medical attention. They are prisoners of war, not criminals. Treat them accordingly. As Kreshtal was led from the conference room, he looked back at Admiral Price one final time. The human commander was already turning to other matters, giving orders to his staff about processing the captured Vareth ships and caring for the prisoners. He showed no satisfaction in his victory, no joy in having defeated a legendary Vareth admiral, just professional competence and a desire to move forward with necessary tasks. That more than anything else drove home the reality of the situation. To the humans, this was not a great victory. It was routine, expected. They had known they would win before the battle began. They had prepared so thoroughly that the outcome was never in doubt. The Vareth Empire had attacked what it thought was a young, weak species. Instead, it had encountered a civilization that had been studying them for decades. That had prepared defenses specifically designed to counter Vareth tactics. That possessed technology decades ahead of what the Empire could produce. That had forces so large that even the mightiest Vareth fleet was simply outnumbered and outmatched. Kreshtal was taken to a comfortable room with a bed, a desk, and a small window showing the stars. He sat on the bed and thought about the message he would have to deliver to the High Council when he was eventually released. The Empire's expansion was over. The era of Vareth dominance was finished. They had finally encountered a species they could not defeat, and now they would have to learn to live in a galaxy where they were not the strongest power, where their will was not absolute, where borders had to be respected and laws had to be followed. Pride would make that lesson difficult for the High Council to accept, but reality did not care about pride. The humans had proven that twice now, and if the Council was foolish enough to attack a third time, Kreshtal suspected there would be no more warnings. No more chances, just the systematic destruction Admiral Price had promised. 3 months later, Kreshtal and his officers were returned to Vareth space aboard human ships. The symbolism was deliberate and humiliating. Human vessels escorting the captured Grand Admiral home. Human technology on display for any Vareth sensors watching. A clear demonstration that humanity controlled the situation completely. The human ships stopped at the edge of Vareth territory and transmitted a message to the High Council. Admiral Price's voice delivered terms for a permanent peace treaty. The Empire would withdraw from all systems within 50 light-years of human space. Vareth ships would be forbidden from entering human territory under any circumstances. The Empire would pay reparations for damages caused by their attacks. Human observers would be stationed on Vareth worlds to ensure compliance. Any future violation would be considered an act of war that humanity would respond to with total force. The terms were harsh, insulting, designed to make clear that the Vareth Empire was now the subordinate power in this relationship. But the High Council had no choice. They had sent their finest commander with their largest fleet, and that fleet had been destroyed even more completely than Zekthar's smaller force. If they attacked again, the humans would not simply defend. They would invade. And based on the overwhelming superiority demonstrated twice now, such an invasion would succeed. The Treaty of Earth, as it came to be known, was signed 3 weeks later, not on a Vareth world but on humanity's homeworld. Council members were required to travel to Earth and sign the agreement in the presence of human leaders. One final humiliation, one final demonstration that the power dynamic had shifted permanently. The treaty signing took place in a grand hall in what the humans called Geneva. Kreshtal was required to attend as a witness. He watched as proud Vareth council members bent their heads and accepted terms they had no power to refuse. He saw the anger in their eyes, the shame, the bitter understanding that their empire's golden age had ended. After the signing, the Vareth delegation was given a tour of Earth's orbital defenses, massive weapons platforms, shipyards producing vessels at a rate the Empire could not match, defense systems that made the fleets at New Haven and Archer's Point look like minor outposts. The message was clear. What the Empire had faced was just a fraction of human military capability. Earth alone could repel anything the Vareth could throw at it. As the delegation left Earth and returned home, they passed by human patrols at the newly established border. The same ships that had destroyed 2 Vareth fleets now guarded the boundary between human and Vareth space, a constant reminder of what waited for anyone foolish enough to cross that line again. Back in Vareth space, a young officer on a patrol ship approached the border during routine duties. He was too young to have fought at New Haven or Archer's Point. He had heard the stories but did not fully believe them. How could one species humiliate an empire as powerful as his own? His sensors detected something at the border, a single human frigate, the same class of ship that Captain Morris had commanded at New Haven. An automated message began playing. "You are approaching restricted human territory. Turn back now. This is your only warning." The patrol ship's commander was an old veteran who had survived Archer's Point. He had been on one of the few ships that witnessed the entire battle from start to finish. He had watched hundreds of his comrades die. He had seen what human technology could do. "Reverse course immediately," the commander ordered. Maximum distance from that border. Do not test them. Do not even think about testing them. The young officer looked confused. Commander, it is just one frigate. Surely we could defeat one ship if we needed to. The commander grabbed the young officer's shoulder hard enough to hurt. His eyes were haunted by memories that would never fade. Listen to me carefully. That is not just a frigate. It is a promise. A reminder, human space is forbidden. We learned that lesson twice. The price of our arrogance was paid in full, in ships, in lives, in pride, in everything we thought made us powerful. And if we ever forget that lesson, if anyone in this empire ever crosses that border again, the humans will not give us a third chance. They will not capture us. They will not accept our surrender. They will come for our worlds. They will end our civilization. And we will not be able to stop them. He released the officer and returned to his command chair. Set course away from the border, and pray that the High Council has learned wisdom from these defeats, because if they have not, if pride leads us to attack humanity one more time, there will be no empire left to return to. The patrol ship retreated into Varath space. The human frigate continued its patrol, undisturbed. Captain Linda Morris sat in the command chair of the HSS Defender, watching the Varath vessel flee on her sensors. She allowed herself a small smile. The message had been received, delivered twice at great cost to those who refused to listen the first time. Human space was forbidden. The border was established. The price for violating it had been demonstrated beyond any possibility of misunderstanding. Humanity did not need to conquer the galaxy. They just needed to make sure no one could conquer them. They needed to establish clear boundaries and enforce them with overwhelming force when necessary. They needed to show aggressive species that some territories were protected by powers they could not challenge, and they had succeeded. The Varath Empire, which had dominated this region of space for 3,000 years, now lived in fear of crossing a line marked by human ships. Other species had taken note. Word spread through diplomatic channels about the two battles, about the technology humans possessed, about the fate of those who violated human territory. The galaxy was learning a new lesson. One that contradicted 3,000 years of Varath expansion and millions of years of evolutionary competition. Strength alone did not determine survival. Technology without wisdom led to defeat. And sometimes the youngest, newest species was the one that had learned the most important lessons. Human space was forbidden. That law was established. The price of arrogance had been paid in full. And the galaxy was a little bit safer because one species had decided that protecting their borders with overwhelming force was preferable to endless expansion through conquest. Captain Morris closed the communication channel and returned to her duties. There would be other challenges, other threats, other species that needed to learn the same lessons the Varath had learned. But for now, the border was secure. The message was clear, and that was enough.